Coming up today here on the Raiders Report, John Spytek reveals the Raiders' 2025 outlook, and I'm going to give you my 2 cents on it. We're also going to be breaking down why the Raiders went out and they drafted Ashton Jeanty, and why the Raiders went out and traded for Geno Smith. If you did not see the full interview of the Raiders GM sitting down with Meirov in the NFL Spotlight, you can go check it out. It's on YouTube. But I'm going to be breaking it down and just giving you my overall thoughts on what Spytek had to say. Though, for the first time in a long time, I believe in what this organization is doing. And if you believe in John Spytek, and if you're excited for this Raiders football season, I want you to hit that like button. I want you to smash that like button. I want you to hit that like button so hard that your parents are going, what the hell is that noise happening in there? And if you're still living at home with your parents, get out of the house. Hit that like button. So coming up here on the show, I'm going to break down the overall outlook from John Spytek in a recent interview. And the first thing that he said of what you can expect from this Raiders team is you can expect this team to go out there and compete. And the amount of times we've heard this term, compete, over and over and over again, Spytek says that the Raiders, they're going to practice hard every day. And I do think that it's already noticeable that you're seeing players that are going out there and they are participating in non-mandatory events. That's a huge tip of the cap to Spytek, and it's a huge tip of the cap to Pete Carroll. Players with energy, coaches that bring in excitement. When you got players that show up with energy every day, and then you marry that with coaches that bring the excitement level that somebody like, Pete Carroll's going to bring, that really helps build a roster. But the Raiders want guys that love football. And this is very, very clear. And every single time you hear a Raiders coach, hear a Raiders front office member talk about what the outlook of this team is. Let's go to the next thing that Spytek has to say in terms of the Raiders' outlook. Solid depth. And I did a video earlier in the week about the Raiders getting screwed by the NFL and just how we don't have as many rest days. But in that video, I said, I wonder if the Raiders knew that this was going to happen and they prepared for it. Because all that this team did the entire offseason, I mean all the way back in February, March, April, was this team tried to build solid depth. And the Raiders wanted to build solid depth, and they did it, I think, in a very, honestly, cost-efficient way. But depth also leads to more competition. So when you bring players in that are fighting, clawing for their NFL jobs, that is going to make the overall room a lot better. I think the Raiders' plan at linebacker, I think the Raiders' plan at cornerback is they're saying, let's just get a bunch of guys competing for a job. It's going to make the entire room better. Also, we know that injuries happen, and the Raiders got zapped by the injury bug last season. So when you have depth, it helps limit the impact of suffering some major injuries, which hopefully it doesn't happen. Let's go to another thing that Spytek had to say about the Raiders' outlook this season. The Raiders plan to win, and I know going into the year there was a lot of speculation of whether or not this is going to be a rebuild, what exactly is going to be the Raiders' plan. John Spytek made it very clear. This team plans on winning, and they plan on winning right away. He also understands, I think, what it takes to win in the AFC West and the amount of talent that is in this division. He also goes on and says, how stacked the coaches are, how stacked the quarterback room is. But one of the things that I've been saying that I think that the Raiders are doing this offseason is they're copycatting what the Philadelphia Eagles did to beat Kansas City. They're copycatting what Tampa Bay and Tom Brady and John Spytek did to beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl back in 2019. So to me, this is a team that thinks that they can win right away, and this is a team trying to build a roster that allows them to win right away against the Chiefs, against the AFC West in the National Football League. The final thing that you are going to get from Raiders team this season and the outlook from Spytek is you're going to get a team that plays hard. And you're going to get a team that shows up and they're going to give 110% September, October, November, December. And that's a brand of football that pays dividends in January and February. One of the things that Spytek said is he mentioned a quote in that interview from John Meirov, and it said, football sometimes is as simple as who can play harder, longer. Think about that quote, because if you're a Raiders team, you're going, I need to be able to get guys that are just crazy mother effers, that love football, they're going to put their bodies on the line, but you also need depth in order to do that. So I think that that's going to be the mindset that the Raiders bring. They want high energy guys. They want to be able to take care of the football. We obviously turned the ball over way too much last season, But an easy way to take care of the football is also to be able to sit there and run the rock. And the Raiders want to be able to attack you down the field, and they also want to be able to pound the rock. A very balanced offense. That is how John Spytek, the Raiders GM, envisions the Silver and Black's outlook this upcoming season. So coming up next here, I'm going to tell you why the Raiders drafted Jeanty. And I've done some shows already this offseason on why the Raiders went out and drafted Jeanty. That's my opinion. Now I'm going to tell you why John Spytek went out and drafted Ashton Jeanty, because I think what he has to say might be a little bit more important. Before I break that down and I just give you the 2 cents of why the Raiders went out and they drafted Ashton Jeanty, I am going to give you guys a question that if you're watching this live right now, it is the pinned comment on today's show. So if you haven't already gone and voted, please make sure that you go and vote. And if you're not watching this live, this is going to be the pinned comment here on today's show. It's a hard one, but it's a good question. Who's going to make a bigger impact for the Las Vegas Raiders? Yeah, there was definitely a giggity in there. Who's going to make a bigger impact for the Raiders this upcoming season? Is it going to be quarterback Geno Smith? Type GS. If you think it's going to be running back Ashton Jeanty, type AJ. My answer after this YouTube ad break. Even though I think Ashton Jeanty is going to be an unbelievable player for the Raiders, the answer has to be quarterback. And it has to be Geno Smith. Because I really do believe Geno Smith on this team with any running back is better than Ashton Jeanty on this team with a quarterback like Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell as the starter. So for that reason, I am going to go Geno Smith is the most important player and will make the biggest impact on the Raiders this season. But in all honesty, I don't think that's all that crazy of a statement to make. Coming up here, why the Raiders drafted Ashton Jeanty. Before I get into that, though, huge shout out to our sponsor here, PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app out there. You can click on the link down in the comments and in the description, so that way you can also get started with PrizePicks. But springtime is here, and baseball season is officially underway. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks lineup. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first-inning runs, take your picks of more or less for your shot to win 2,000 times your cash today. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. The basketball playoffs, they're heating up on PrizePicks, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. If you're trying to run your game all season long, do it over on PrizePicks. And one PrizePicks thing that I like is you can mix and match player projections from different sports. Now, I know up on screen right now is my season-long Raiders picks, which I have gone more. This is 20 to potentially win $370, but you can mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite baseball players with players from basketball, hockey, esports, and much more. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Sign up today and get $50 instantly. When you play $5, you don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. I love PrizePicks. Chugs loves PrizePicks. And if you're planning on watching any playoff games, put in a PrizePicks lineup. I think you're going to enjoy your experience a whole lot more. Let's go to why the Raiders drafted Ashton Jeanty. The first reason that Spytek said of why the Silver and Black went out and got Jeanty, Spytek called him a humble superstar. And I love that term for Jeanty because I think, honestly, it fits super flippin' well. And he compared him to Barry Sanders. He was like, when we went back and we looked, and he was 30 yards short of Barry Sanders, that's one of those things that kind of goes off in your head a little bit. But he also mentions this, and I'm so happy that he did because I knew from a source how important that Boise State Pro Day was for Spytek. And you got to remember, Spytek and the Raiders running back coach were the only GM running back coach combination at the Boise State Pro Day. But what Spytek mentions is he's like, we all knew how talented Jeanty was. We know how incredible he was, but it's the way he moved throughout the building and the way he carried himself throughout the building and the amount of respect he had throughout the building. Not every superstar is liked everywhere they go, but when they saw how loved Jeanty was in that building throughout the building, that was a humble superstar that they needed to add it to this team because that's something that they're trying to bring to Las Vegas. Let's go to the next reason here of why the Raiders drafted Jeanty from Spytek. Spytek wants to play violent football. And you've heard Spytek use this term, violent football, before. I like to refer it as FU football. And Spytek wants to be physical. He wants to beat the shit out of you. And he talks about, him playing football back in his Michigan days and how important it was being able to win in the trenches and how important it was for you to allow that other team to know that you're going to try to beat the crap out of them. Jeanty is a nightmare to tackle. And, it's kind of funny. The other day here at Chat Sports, we had a trivia night, and we were talking about a name, Bucky Irving, and it was funny because Bucky Irving got mentioned by Spytek of him saying, Bucky used to always say, the first guy's not going to tackle me. And Jeanty also has that mindset of the first guy isn't going to tackle me. So when you add this physical, violent brand of football, and with a guy that's a nightmare to tackle, that is a good combination to have for Spytek in his mind. And then the last thing that John said was, it starts with the run game. The Raiders this offseason have shown you that they are doing everything in their power to make sure that, one, Jeanty is going to be great, but then also Geno Smith is going to be great, and they're trying to do everything they can to make sure that Geno is going to succeed. And one of the things Spytek mentions, he's like, it's important to have a good passing game, but an easy way to take pressure off of that passing game is to have a great running game, which Pete Carroll always talks about. But Spytek also mentions Baker Mayfield and how he was so good for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but then Spytek also mentioned, he was like, well, we also had a top 5 running game. And he really credits that great, reliable running game, obviously with the offensive line, of one of the big reasons why Baker Mayfield was kind of able to, take his game to the next level. The Raiders also understand the recipe on how to beat Kansas City. For a long time, I think teams were trying to find a quarterback that could compete with Patrick Mahomes. And I just don't know if that's going to happen, right? That's like you trying to find somebody one-on-one to beat Michael Jordan, somebody to take that last shot over Kobe Bryant. Those type of guys, they don't grow on trees. So instead of trying to find another version of that player, well, why don't we try to build a team that allows that guy to stay on the sideline? And to me, the Raiders are building that team the way Philadelphia did, the way Tampa Bay did to beat Patrick Mahomes, to beat Andy Reid, to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And I really think that they believe it starts with the ground game, taking care of the football and playing that physical FU type of brand. Coming up next here, why Spytek and why the Raiders traded for Geno Smith. And this was another thing that I was very curious to hear what Spytek had to say, and I'm sure a bunch of y'all are very curious to hear what Spytek had to say as well. Before I do, if you do not know, our Week 3 Madden Sim this Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. The Las Vegas Raiders on the road against the Washington Commanders, and our Madden record, 1-0-1. The Commanders' Madden record, 1-1. So if you do not know, hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications, and all off season, Monday, Friday, will be our Madden Sims. Obviously, this upcoming Monday is a holiday. I will not be live on that Monday. Chugs and I and the entire Chat Sports team, we are off that day, so we will have to reschedule that Week 4 game. I just want y'all to know what we're doing on Friday. We had over 1,000 people watching us live. We had over 12,000 people watching that Madden stream. If you're looking for something to do on Friday and you enjoy Friday happy hour with the Raiders game, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you pull up. I promise you, you're going to have a good time. So let's get into why the Raiders went out and they traded for Geno Smith. This is, again, from the John Spytek interview with Ari Meirov. You can watch it on YouTube. The first reason of why Spytek thought that the Raiders went out and did it, he goes and he says, Geno played a lot of good football. And I also did not realize the amount of good football that Geno Smith played until I went back and I watched the tape. When you watch the tape, you realize that Geno Smith is clearly the best quarterback that the Raiders have had since 2016 Derek Carr. And I don't know if it's all that close, which, again, maybe isn't saying a lot. But the fact that Geno, people don't realize how good he is because of how bad the offensive line was for Seattle, it's going to open up some eyes, and I think it opened up Spytek's eyes. The other thing that he said was, he keeps fighting and he keeps competing. There's a lot of players that when they face adversity, they don't know how to respond. And Geno was one of those players that was even though multiple teams moved on from him, he kept fighting, he kept competing, and he still believed in himself. That's what the Raiders want. They want a leader that has that mentality. They want a leader that's always going to fight, that's always going to compete. And that's exactly what they're getting in Geno Smith. When your top guys are doing it, it's going to lead to the bottom of the roster guys also doing the exact same thing. He also compared him to Baker Mayfield, and it kind of talked about, their mentalities being very similar, but also how Baker, was somebody that a lot of people said, oh, that guy's not good anymore. But what did Baker do? He worked and he continued to work, and he showed that he was, tough as nails. Geno's kind of got that tough as nails mentality, and I almost find it funny because I just think that people that don't like Geno Smith that are Raiders fans are still kind of just hung up on Derek Carr, and maybe that's an unfair thing to say. But I don't know how you look at Geno Smith and you hear what Geno Smith has to say, and you know his story, and you don't go, that's a guy that I want to root for. Because Geno Smith is the most Raider quarterback that we've had in a long time. He is the most Raider quarterback that I can remember, and I don't even know how long. And that type of mentality, you can compare it to Baker Mayfield, a quarterback that's had a lot of success with John Spytek, and I think that similarity was why Spytek also was probably like, all right, I'll sign off on that trade. Another thing about Geno that Spytek loves is that he can challenge any place on the field, and Spytek mentions this, and when you bring in an offensive coordinator like Chip Kelly's going to try to attack you on all aspects of the field, and he's going to try to beat you. Luckily, you have the number one explosive thrower in the NFL in Geno Smith, of balls down the field of explosive plays. Geno legitimately can throw the ball any place, and he can do it very accurately. And when you combine that with Chip Kelly, that is a recipe for success. And then the final reason, and this is very important, Geno gives you a chance to win every week. The Raiders haven't had a quarterback that gives you a legitimate chance to win every single week since Derek Carr. And I do think that Geno Smith is a better quarterback than Derek Carr. I think Geno is a upgrade over what DC is and what DC was. Again, you're going to split hairs wherever you go, but I think when you just consider the fact of the type of QB and the type of leader that Geno Smith's going to be, and you marry that to a Tom Brady, Pete Carroll, John Spytek, and you marry that to a Chip Kelly, Patrick Graham, and what this Raiders team is trying to accomplish, it makes sense why they went out and drafted Jeanty. It makes sense why they went out and traded for Geno Smith. And it makes sense why the Raiders went out and hired John Spytek. Appreciate all y'all tuning in to today's show. And again, I wanted to be able to illustrate the biggest takeaways of what Spytek had to say in a recent interview with Ari Meirov on the NFL Spotlight. You can go check it out on YouTube. You can also go check it out on Ari's Twitter. I believe it's My Sports Update. But I love the interview from John Spytek. I've been trying to get in contact with you. If you ever want to do an interview here on the Raiders Report, I promise you this. More people will watch this than your interview with Ari. That I can guarantee.